I still remember the sound of the party, the clinking glasses, the loud laughter, the glow of the chandeliers, and my sister Emma standing in the center of the room like she was the queen of the night. It was her 25th birthday, a grand celebration she had spent months planning. Everything was perfectly arranged. Perfect decorations, perfect outfits, perfect smiles, everything except the way I felt standing among them. But the moment that truly cut into me, the moment that made everything shift, was when my own mother looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Don't sit near us," just like that, soft voice, polite smile, as if she hadn't just shoved me out of the family circle, as if her words didn't sting like a slap across the face. I felt the weight of every eye in the room turned toward me, waiting, watching to see if I'd cause a scene or embarrass them, but I didn't. I swallowed the hurt, nodded politely, and stood up without a word. Inside, something cracked. People pretended not to notice, but they did. You can always tell when pity crawls through a room. Some turned their faces away, some whispered behind their hands, others watched me with the same expression someone gives a stray dog, sadness mixed with discomfort. The worst part was that none of this was new. My family had always treated me like an afterthought, a shadow standing behind Emma. I was 27, the older sibling, but somehow the one treated like a burden, the one who didn't quite fit the family image. Emma was always the star, always the favorite, always the one who could do no wrong, and I was the steady child, the one who helped, who stayed quiet, who made things work, the one they leaned on and yet the one they never saw. But that night, Emma's birthday, something was different. Their behavior wasn't just the usual favoritism or dismissiveness. No. That night, my mother's eyes were full of urgency. My father looked tense. Emma kept avoiding my gaze, and none of them seemed to want me anywhere close to whatever was going on at the main table. I didn't know then what they were hiding. I didn't know how deep the betrayal went, but I was about to learn. Growing up, Emma and I weren't enemies, not at first. I adored her, protected her, took care of her. When she cried, I was the one who comforted her. When she needed a ride, I drove across town at midnight. When she struggled in school, I helped her study. I was her big brother. I was supposed to be her shield, but being raised as the favorite taught her something dangerous, that everyone existed to serve her, and my parents reinforced that every day. Emma got everything she wanted: better clothes, more attention, private lessons, expensive hobbies. When she succeeded, she was celebrated. When she failed, she was comforted. When I achieved something, it was expected. When I failed, I was scolded. If she wanted a new phone, mom bought it. If I asked for one, they told me to wait or use hers when she upgraded. She learned privilege, I learned silence, but despite everything, I never hated her. I hated how our parents shaped her. Favoritism doesn't just spoil children, it trains them. It teaches them that they are inherently worth more. Emma grew into that role so flawlessly that she didn't even realize she was hurting people, especially me. 3 weeks before the party, she called me. Her voice was bright, rehearsed. "Lucas, you're coming to my birthday dinner, right? I want the family table to look perfect." I didn't think much of those words then, but later I realized perfect meant without you messing up the picture. Then she added, "We're something simple, nothing too attention grabby." I laughed and told her I didn't own anything attention grabby. "Good," she said, relieved. The next day, mom sent a message to the family group chat: "We'll have a family dinner first. Lucas can help with cleanup before the guests arrive." Cleanup, not celebration, not sitting with them, not being part of the toast. I almost didn't go, but dad called and convinced me, "Just come, don't worry about your mother. She's stressed." She was always stressed. That excuse had been used my entire life. When I arrived, the restaurant was already beautifully arranged. I walked in wearing the nicest shirt I owned, only to find my parents and sister at the head table without a seat for me. A server tried to bring one, but mom waved her away. That was when she said those words again: "Don't sit near us." Her expression didn't change, calm, cold, polite, like I was a stranger intruding on something important. I sat at a small corner table instead, trying to blend into the background. But even from there, I noticed things. Emma wasn't just birthday girl excited, she was nervous. She kept checking the door, mom kept adjusting her hair and makeup. Dad kept wringing his hands under the table. Something was coming, something big. Then I noticed a tall, confident-looking man sitting next to Emma. He whispered something and she blushed. I had never seen him before in my life. When the clock hit 7:15, Dad stood up to give a toast. "Tonight isn't just Emma's birthday," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's the start of a new chapter." My mother clasped her hands dramatically. Emma looked at the man beside her, then back at Dad as if waiting for permission. "This is Daniel," Dad announced. "Emma's future." Future, the word hung in the air like a bell. People clapped. Emma beamed. Daniel nodded politely. And I sat alone at a tiny table by the window, excluded from the most important announcement of my sister's life. I didn't even know she was dating someone seriously. I wasn't invited to the proposal planning. I wasn't included in the secret. I was treated like I didn't exist, and that was intentional. Because a few minutes later, while I was walking toward the hallway to get some air, I heard my parents talking behind the partially closed door of the private dining room. Mom said sharply, "I told you to keep Lucas away from the table. He'll make things awkward." Dad whispered, "We shouldn't treat him like that. He's still our son." Mom hissed, "Emma's future matters more right now. We can't risk him asking questions in front of Daniel's family." Dad's voice trembled. "About the money, money, my money." Mom sighed impatiently. "Yes, the money. Do you think he suspects anything?" Dad murmured, "I don't think so. Lucas never asks questions." I felt sick, my head spun, my legs weakened. Mom continued, "Emma needed that money more than he did. He'll be fine. He always figures something out." I stumbled back, heart racing, mind spiraling. That money, my savings, was everything I had worked for. 10 years of part-time jobs, scholarships, denied birthday gifts, sacrifices I had saved for a home, for a stable future. And they had taken it, given it to Emma. Behind my back, I walked outside trying to breathe. Emma followed minutes later. Lucas, wait, why are you acting weird? I stared at her. You really want to ask me that? She bit her lip. I know you overheard something, so it's true. My voice cracked. The money, Daniel, the secret, the reason I was kept away. She looked down. I needed it. For what? I demanded. For him. She didn't answer. That money was my future, Emma. Her voice was small. You're strong. You'll recover. I needed it more. There it was. The truth, not even hidden. I was the dependable one, the one they could take from, the one who would always recover. She leaned forward. Please don't ruin tonight. I laughed bitterly. Tonight was already ruined. Daniel came outside, confused. Who's this? Emma didn't answer fast enough. He assumed. Oh, is he one of the cleaners? Cleaner, a stranger, not family. Emma didn't correct him. That moment broke something in me so deeply I could almost hear it. I breathed slowly, forcing calm into my voice. Happy birthday, Emma. My name is Lucas. I'm 27 and I am the older brother, the responsible one who always kept my family stable while they poured everything into Emma. And before you think I'm exaggerating, let me show you how it really was. Growing up, if Emma got an A, she was taken out for dinner. If I got an A, they'd just say, good, that's expected. If Emma wanted a new phone, she got it, but if I asked, they said, use hers when she upgrades. If Emma failed at something, they comforted her, but if I failed, they scolded me. She was praised, I was compared, she was supported, I was tolerated. But the thing is, I never hated her, not at first. I loved my sister and I defended her. I was the one who helped her with homework when she didn't feel like studying, stayed up at night comforting her after her breakups, even walked miles to buy her favorite snacks when she was sad. Even when she was ungrateful, even when she didn't say thank you, even when she treated me like I was just another house servant, I did it because that's what love does to you. It makes you blind, it makes you forgive things that shouldn't be forgiven, but my parents didn't help. To them, Emma wasn't just a daughter, she was an investment, the family pride, the one who was supposed to go far and make us proud. Me, I was steady, a safe bet, someone who would figure it out eventually. I studied hard, got scholarships, worked part-time jobs, and saved every dollar I could. I built myself from the ground up. Meanwhile, they poured money into Emma's hobbies, ballet classes, piano lessons, art programs, fashion training, modeling workshops, half of which she quit after a few months. She's still young, they always said. She's exploring her passions. But when I said I wanted to try something new, they said no, stick to something practical. And I did because I had no choice. Years of this, years of being the one who stood behind while Emma always stood in front, years of hearing my parents gush over her as if she were the only thing they loved, all of it built up inside me. But I still stayed quiet because I believed that someday things would even out, that maybe when we were adults they'd finally start seeing me too. Spoiler, they didn't, and Emma, she didn't change either. If anything, she became worse. Favoritism doesn't just spoil children, it trains them. It teaches them that they're special, untouchable, that they deserve more than others, and that's exactly what Emma believed. The first sign something was off happened weeks before her birthday. She called me one night and said, Lucas, I need you at my party, don't be late, I want the family table to look perfect. Family table, except apparently I wasn't part of that perfect picture. Then she added, also. Wear something simple, nothing too attention-grabbing. I laughed awkwardly and said, Emma, I don't even own anything attention-grabbing. She replied, exactly, just don't try too hard. It stung, but I let it go. Then the invitation came through the family group chat, except it wasn't really an invitation. It said, everyone be on time for Emma's big day. Family dinner ends at 7:30. Lucas will help with cleanup before the guests arrive. Cleanup, not celebration, not a roll and a toast, not a seat at the family table. Cleanup. I stared at the screen for a long time, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, but I still showed up because I believed maybe, just maybe, there'd be a moment during the night when I'd feel included. Then at the party, my mother looked at me and said the words I'll never forget, don't sit near us. No explanation, no apology, just cold dismissal. At that moment, I had only questions. Why at my sister's birthday dinner was I told to sit somewhere else like an outsider? Why had the family acted so strangely for days leading up to the event? Why had Emma seemed nervous whenever I walked in? At the time, I didn't know, but later, when everything came crashing down, I understood. They didn't want me near them because they were hiding something, a secret they didn't want me to discover, a betrayal bigger than anything I'd imagined. And standing up that night, quietly walking away from the table, was the first step toward uncovering everything. I didn't know it yet, but by obeying my mom's cruel instruction, I walked straight into the truth. And trust me, the truth was ugly, the kind of truth that makes your hands shake, the kind that makes you question your entire childhood, the kind that turns a birthday party into the beginning of a revenge I never planned to take but absolutely had to. When I walked away from that table, the entire restaurant suddenly felt colder. I could still hear Emma's laugh echoing through the room, high, polished, almost practiced, like she was performing for the guests rather than enjoying her birthday. My mother didn't even look back at me. My father gave me a single awkward glance, then quickly turned away and pretended to be busy with the menu. I sat at a small corner table near the window, not part of the family section, not part of anything. A waitress approached me gently, her eyes softening as she whispered, "Are you sure you don't want to sit with them? We can bring a chair." I forced a smile and said, "No, it's okay, I'll stay here." She hesitated, sensing that something wasn't right, but eventually nodded and left. As I watched my family from a distance, something felt off. Everyone looked too coordinated, too rehearsed, as if they had memorized their smiles. And Emma. She kept glancing toward me, quickly turning away each time as if I wasn't supposed to be there at all. That's when the strange details started adding up. Emma's seat was at the head of the table, and my name card, was missing entirely. My parents were exchanging silent looks, and a man I'd never seen before was sitting beside Emma. Who was he? Tall, dressed in a crisp blazer. He sat close, too close to her. He whispered something in her ear, and she blushed. Then it clicked. This wasn't just a birthday dinner. This was something else, something they hadn't told me about. I wasn't pushed away because I didn't fit the picture. I was pushed away because they didn't want me ruining a moment that didn't include me. Around 7:15, my father stood up with his glass raised and said, "Everyone quiet, please. We want to say a few words about our wonderful daughter." My mother, glowing with pride, clasped her hands and the guests clapped politely. And I just sat in my corner, watching and listening. Dad continued, "Emma has always been special, always destined for great things." I almost rolled my eyes but kept still. Then he added, "And tonight's not just her birthday, it's also a celebration of a new chapter." "New chapter?" My mother nodded eagerly, glancing toward the tall man beside Emma. Emma stood up, smiling nervously, and linked her arm with his. That's when the truth hit me. They were introducing her boyfriend to everyone except me. They didn't want me at the table, not because there wasn't space, but because they didn't trust me not to embarrass them. My father declared proudly, "Everyone meet Daniel, Emma's future." The guests clapped again, and I felt my breath catch in my chest. This was a family milestone, something siblings usually share, and I wasn't part of it. I looked at Emma, hoping she'd meet my eyes. She didn't, she couldn't. I couldn't sit there any longer, so I stood up quietly, intending to step outside for some air. As I made my way toward the hallway, I overheard whispers near the washroom. It was my parents talking about me. My mom's voice was sharp. "Lucas should not be near the table. He'll make things awkward. Daniel's family is coming later. We can't risk it." My dad sighed. "He's still our son, though." "Yes," my mom snapped, "but Emma's future matters more right now." I froze. My father lowered his voice and asked, "You think he suspects anything?" My mom let out a bitter laugh. "Lucas never asks questions. He just works, pays the bills, minds his own business. He won't find out unless someone tells him." My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. "Don't forget, we're still waiting for that money to clear from his account. After that, we'll figure out how to explain it." Something inside me cracked. Money from my account. What were they planning? What had they already done? My father whispered, "Just keep him away from Emma and Daniel tonight. Once her engagement is final, we'll deal with him." My chest tightened, rage boiling quietly inside me, but I forced myself to stay hidden and listen. My mom continued, "Emma needs the money more than he does. Lucas can survive without it." My vision blurred. They were talking about my savings, the money I worked for, the money I depended on. My knees felt weak. My parents, the people who raised me, were stealing from me, and they didn't want me near the table because they were trying to keep Emma's soon-to-be fiancé from learning the truth. I stepped back, realizing the entire birthday wasn't about love or celebration. It was about covering up a betrayal, my own family's betrayal. And the worst part, Emma was part of it. I turned to leave before causing a scene, but Emma followed me outside and grabbed my wrist. "Lucas, wait, why are you acting weird?" she asked. I stared at her and said, "You really want to ask me that?" She bit her lip, avoiding my eyes, and finally whispered, "I know you overheard something." My heart dropped. She knew exactly what they were doing. I clenched my jaw. "Emma, what did you do?" I asked. She looked around nervously. "Can we not talk about this here, please? Tonight is important," she pleaded. I stepped back and said, "Important for who? Because clearly it's not for me." Her voice trembled as she tried to explain, but I cut her off. "Of course, Mom said. Mom decides everything, right?" Emma swallowed hard and finally blurted out, "Lucas, the money, it's temporary." My blood ran cold. Emma continued, panic in her voice. "I just needed it. Daniel's family expects a certain standard. Dad promised you. Do you understand?" "Understand," I snapped. "Emma, you emptied my savings," I said, voice shaking. She flinched. "That money was for my house deposit, my future," I added. "I know," she whispered, "but you're strong. You always figure things out." There it was again, the family mantra. I was strong, reliable, the one who never needed help, the one they could take from without guilt. I took a slow breath. "So, this birthday dinner, this whole event, it's all built on my money?" I asked. Emma didn't deny it. She didn't even try. That silence was worse than any confession. Just then, Daniel walked out to join her and looked at me with confusion. "Is everything okay? I haven't met you yet. Are you a coworker?" he asked. "A coworker?" I thought. "Not even family." Emma panicked and said, "Daniel, this is my brother Lucas." He extended his hand with a smile and said, "Oh, the brother, nice to meet you." The word brother felt like an insult. I was nothing more than background, a distant relative she never mentioned. In the way Emma tensed beside him, I realized she had never told him we were close. She never told him anything real about me. I wasn't part of her image or her life. I was just background. I forced a brief handshake, then stepped back. Daniel smiled politely, unaware of the storm brewing under the surface. "So Lucas, Emma tells me you're doing something in accounting," he said casually. "Something in accounting," I thought. "I ran my own freelance financial consultancy from scratch with international clients." Emma had reduced it to something. I nodded calmly. "Something like that," I said. He smiled again. "Ah, good, stable job, good for you." Emma's eyes darted, silently begging me not to ruin her facade, and right then I decided something. I wasn't going to confront them at the party. No, that would give them control. That would turn me into the villain in front of strangers. Instead, I stepped back, looked Emma in the eyes, and said softly, "Happy birthday." She exhaled in relief. But she didn't realize that was the moment I switched from hurt to focused, from passive to calculating, from the ignored older brother to the one who saw everything clearly. Because while they thought they were betraying me quietly, they forgot one thing: I never act without thinking, and I never forget. When I left the restaurant that night, the air outside felt heavier than the crowded dining room I had escaped. My hands were trembling not from the cold, but from the sharp realization that everything I had believed about my family was an illusion. I walked slowly, each step dragging under the weight of betrayal, trying to make sense of 10 years of sacrifices they had discarded like trash. My savings weren't just money, they were years of missed outings, skipped vacations, overworked evenings, and endless responsibility. And Emma had taken it not because she was desperate, but because she felt entitled. She believed, just like my parents, that my life existed to support hers. That night, something inside me shifted for good. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I walked around the city aimlessly, letting the streetlights guide me through the darkness that had settled over my thoughts. I felt anger, yes, but beneath it was something deeper: clarity. A realization that my parents had never seen me as an equal part of the family. I wasn't a son, I was a resource, a useful tool, a safety net, someone they depended on but never appreciated. And Emma, she was the golden child raised to believe that taking from me wasn't stealing, it was simply redistributing what she felt she deserved. But my anger was not loud, it wasn't explosive. It was cold, quiet, and determined. I wasn't going to confront them emotionally, that's exactly what they expected. They wanted me to yell, to cry, to cause a scene so they could turn it around and blame me. No, I would not give them that satisfaction. I would take my time, observe, and act when they least expected it. The next morning, I checked my bank account again, hoping I had misread the numbers the previous night. I hadn't. The majority of my savings were gone, transferred into an account I didn't recognize. A single note in the transaction read, "Family emergency." That was their justification, a lie wrapped in a polite description. My hands tightened around my phone, my chest burning with frustration. I reported the unauthorized transfer to the bank, and the representative said they would launch an investigation. But she also warned me, if the transfer was made by someone with shared account access or family authorization I had signed years ago, it would take longer to resolve. And that was the moment I remembered. When I was 18, my parents had convinced me to sign some basic financial documents so they could help manage my savings until I was older. I was naive then, trusting them blindly. I didn't question anything. They had taken advantage of my trust and used it as a key to steal from me nearly a decade later. I stared at my reflection in the phone screen, eyes tired, jaw tense, and felt a dark resolve settle in my chest. They thought they could take from me forever. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I wouldn't fight back, but they didn't know me as well as they thought. I had spent years being the quiet one, the dependable one, the one who listened and observed. That made them underestimate me. And they would regret that. For 2 days, I didn't speak to my family. I received a few texts from Dad asking if I got home safely, but they felt half-hearted, almost scripted, as if he was checking a box. My mother didn't message at all. Emma sent one short text, "Can we talk when things cool down?" As if what they had done was a small argument, a misunderstanding, something that could be fixed with a simple conversation. I deleted her message without replying. I decided to take time off work to focus on sorting out the disaster unfolding in my life. I printed bank statements, gathered documents, and scheduled a consultation with a lawyer. It wasn't cheap, but losing everything I had worked for was far more costly. The lawyer listened carefully as I explained what happened, flipping through the papers with a serious expression. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You have a case. It won't be easy, especially if your parents used old financial authorizations, but what they did is unethical at best and illegal at worst." Hearing those words didn't make me feel good, it made me feel validated. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't imagining things. I had been robbed by the people who were supposed to protect me. The lawyer continued, "This will take time, you need to be patient, gather everything you can, and do not confront them directly, they could try to hide evidence." I nodded. Patience was something I had never lacked. Meanwhile, I went silent toward my family, not out of fear but out of strategy. I knew silence unsettled them more than anger. Emma called me twice. I didn't answer. Mom messaged once, "We need to talk." I ignored it. Dad messaged, "Please don't shut us out," but I chose not to reply. I wasn't shutting them out. I was choosing myself for the first time. Then on the third day, Dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. He knocked softly as if afraid I wouldn't open. When I did, he looked relieved but also worried. "Lucas, can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't pretend to be cheerful. He sat down heavily on my couch, elbows on his knees, eyes tired. "Your mom told me you were upset," he began. My jaw clenched. Upset, that was the word she used. Not betrayed, not wronged, not stolen from. Upset. I sat across from him and waited. He sighed and looked at the floor. "Look. We were going to tell you, we just didn't find the right moment." My blood boiled. "Tell me what?" I asked flatly. He hesitated. "Emma needed help, the engagement, her future. There were expenses we didn't plan for. We didn't want her to lose this opportunity." Opportunity, that word stung more than anything. My hard-earned savings were reduced to a mere opportunity for Emma's convenience. "So you took my money," I said quietly. Dad didn't deny it. Instead, he said, "We thought you'd understand. You've always been responsible, strong, you'll bounce back." There it was again, the same excuse Emma used. I was strong so they could take from me. I was responsible so I could suffer the consequences. I was steady so they didn't need to care about my future. My voice was calm, too calm. "Dad, that money was my future." He looked pained but not guilty. "We didn't take all of it," he said softly. "You still have enough to start again." It was the most tone-deaf thing he could have said. "Start again?" I repeated slowly. "Dad, I spent 10 years building that, and you expect me to start again because Emma needed a fancy engagement?" Dad closed his eyes, shame flickering across his face. But instead of apologizing, he said, "You know how your mother is. She felt it was the right thing to do. She wanted Emma to have the life she deserves. The life she deserves. And what do I deserve? They never asked that. They never cared." I leaned back and said, "I'm contacting the bank and a lawyer." Dad froze, eyes widening. "Lucas, don't do this," he whispered. "You'll tear this family apart." For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel responsible for their mistakes. I simply said, "You already did." Dad left quietly, saying he would try to talk to Mom, but I didn't care anymore. Their panic wasn't my problem. Their discomfort wasn't my burden. For years, I carried the weight of this family, and all it did was crush me. Later that evening, Emma messaged me again. "Dad told me you're being dramatic. Can you stop making everything about you?" I stared at her message for a long time. Then, with a calmness I didn't recognize in myself, I typed back, "You'll hear from my lawyer soon." I hit send. Her frantic calls started less than a minute later, but I ignored every one of them. Because I wasn't the quiet, obedient older brother anymore. Part 3 ends exactly where the next storm begins, with my sister realizing that I wasn't backing down, and that the consequences she never thought she'd face were finally coming. Emma's calls kept coming long after I sent that final message, one after another, her name flashing across my screen like an alarm I refused to answer. At first, I watched the phone vibrate on the table, feeling nothing but a cold, steady resolve. Then I turned it face down and let it ring. For once in my life, I wasn't rushing to soothe her panic. I wasn't being the responsible older brother who fixed everything. She could sit with her fear. She deserved to. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I finally let myself feel everything I had been holding back. Anger, hurt, betrayal. But strangely, beneath all of that, there was something unexpected: relief. A weight I had carried for years was finally slipping off my shoulders. I had spent my entire life living for other people, bending whenever they pushed, shrinking whenever they shined brighter, and now I was done. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages from my family. Dad sent a long paragraph telling me not to make any rash decisions. Mom sent one sentence, "You're embarrassing us." Emma sent a stream of voice notes I refused to listen to, and then to my surprise, I received a message from an unknown number. It simply read, "This is Daniel. Can we talk?" I stared at the message in disbelief. Emma must have dragged him into the mess, or worse, she told him a version of the truth with her at the center as the victim. I didn't reply. If Daniel wanted to understand what kind of family he was marrying into, he would find out soon enough. That afternoon, I had another meeting with my lawyer. We reviewed my documents, built a timeline, and prepared formal requests for bank statements and internal transfer records. He explained that my parents could face serious consequences if the transfer was deemed fraudulent. The thought of them being held accountable didn't make me happy. It didn't make me sad either. It simply felt fair. For once, fairness was on my side. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my apartment again, but this time I didn't open the door. I watched them silently through the peephole as my mother banged on the wood, her voice sharp and furious. "Lucas, open this door right now. We are a family. You don't treat us like strangers." The irony of that statement nearly made me laugh. I had never been treated like family, not in the way that mattered. Dad's voice was softer, muffled. "Son, please, we can talk, we can fix this." But they didn't want to fix anything. They wanted to control the outcome. They wanted me to drop everything and move on, just like I always had. I stayed silent. Eventually they left, my mother muttering angrily under her breath, and the hallway fell quiet again. Later that night, Emma finally sent a message that made me pause. It wasn't angry or defensive. It was desperate. "Lucas, if you do this, Daniel might leave me." I read her words slowly, feeling them sink in. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge what she took from me. Not once did she ask how I was doing. She cared only about herself, just as she always had, and yet. That message told me something important. She was scared. For the first time in her life, Emma was genuinely afraid of losing something, and she was powerless to stop it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Her fear was not my responsibility. Over the next week, I focused on my work and my case. I went through old documents my parents had saved for emergencies, looking for proof of what I signed when I was 18. I found a folder buried at the bottom of a drawer, papers with my shaky teenage signature granting my parents limited authorization over my savings account. My lawyer examined them and said, "This helps. It proves they had access, but not permission for a transfer of that size." I nodded slowly. There it was, proof of their betrayal, documented in ink. But with every step I took, the tension with my family grew thicker. They sent more messages, some angry, some pleading, some manipulative. Mom wrote, "If you loved your sister, you wouldn't do this." Dad wrote, "Let's sort this out as a family." Emma wrote, "Please don't ruin everything for me." Not one of them wrote, "We're sorry." Then one evening, I received an unexpected knock, not frantic like before, soft, hesitant. When I opened the door, Daniel was standing there, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. He wasn't dressed for a confrontation. He looked like a man who had been pushed into a situation he didn't understand. "Lucas?" he asked quietly. I stepped back slightly but didn't invite him in. He cleared his throat. "I hope you don't mind me coming. I think I deserve to know what's going on." For a long moment, I studied him. He didn't have the arrogance I expected. His eyes were confused and worried. Maybe Emma hadn't told him the truth after all. Or maybe she had told him a twisted version. Either way, I wasn't going to lie. I gestured for him to speak. He said, "Emma told me you're upset about family finances, but the way she talks about it, it doesn't make sense." He hesitated. "She said you were threatening her, that you're jealous." I almost laughed. Jealous of what? Being the family golden child raised on favoritism and lies. I took a breath and said, "Daniel, did you know your engagement party, your arrangements, were paid for with my savings?" His expression shifted instantly, shock, disbelief, confusion. What? He whispered. That's not possible. Emma told me. He stopped, realizing something was very wrong. I showed him the bank statement with the transfer and explained everything, my parents' conversation, the stolen savings, the way they hid me at the dinner. Daniel looked sick as he read through the evidence. When he finally looked up, his voice was barely audible. I didn't know. She didn't tell me any of this, I nodded. I figured. He rubbed his face with both hands, exhaling sharply. Lucas, I'm so sorry. I didn't come from a family like this. I assumed everything was okay. His reaction was genuine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen by someone in my sister's orbit. Before he left, he said something I wasn't expecting. No matter what Emma told you, you're not the problem here, and you don't deserve this. It wasn't a solution, but it was validation, something my own family had never given me. The next day, all hell broke loose. Emma showed up at my apartment in tears, pounding on the door, begging me to let her in. Her voice was frantic, almost hysterical. Lucas, open the door. You talked to Daniel. You ruined everything. I didn't answer, and she continued yelling. Why would you do this? Do you hate me that much? Tears fell, her voice cracked, but still no apology, no accountability. Behind her crying, I heard my mother's voice from the hallway. Emma, stop this, don't give him the satisfaction. And then Dad's voice, Lucas, please just talk to us. I stood behind my closed door, listening to all of them unravel, realizing that the power dynamic had completely shifted. For the first time, they were the ones losing control. They were the ones desperate, and I was calm. The next morning, Daniel sent me a final message. Lucas, I ended things with Emma. This was too much. I'm sorry. I stared at his words, feeling a strange mixture of closure and sadness. Not for Emma, but for the life she could have had if she hadn't been raised to believe she was entitled to everything, even at the cost of the people who loved her. My mother sent a message right after. You destroyed your sister's happiness. I hope you're proud. But instead of hurting me, her words confirmed the truth. They had never cared about my happiness. Only Emma's. A week passed and the bank finally responded. Investigation was nearly complete and things were leaning heavily in my favor. My lawyer told me to prepare for the next steps, formal charges if necessary. Everything was lining up, everything was moving forward, but then something unexpected happened, something I didn't see coming. My father showed up again, but this time he was alone. No anger, no demands, no excuses, just quiet, heavy sadness in his eyes. When I opened the door, he looked older than I had ever seen him. Lucas. Please, he whispered, can we talk? Everything would change in that conversation, everything, and I was finally ready to hear it. When I let my father in, he stepped cautiously inside my apartment as if he wasn't sure he had the right to be there anymore. He sat down slowly on the edge of the sofa, his hands clasped tightly together, his shoulders slumped. For the first time in my life, I saw a man who wasn't pretending to be strong. He looked like someone who had lost control of everything he thought he could manage, someone who finally realized the consequences of years of decisions he never questioned, years of allowing my mother and sister to dictate what was acceptable and what wasn't. He didn't speak at first. The silence stretched between us, heavy and awkward. I didn't rush to fill it. Eventually, he inhaled deeply and said, I know you don't owe me your time, but I need to tell you something. His voice shook slightly. I want you to hear it from me before things go any further. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, waiting. He rubbed his forehead before looking up at me with tired eyes. Your mother, she pushed for the transfer. She insisted Emma needed help. She said it was temporary, that she would put it back once things settled. He swallowed. But I didn't stop her. I should have. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't stop her. There was no excuse in his voice, no attempt to soften the truth. Just honesty, raw, painful, overdue. I've spent my whole life keeping the peace, he continued. Every time your mother favored Emma, every time she dismissed you, I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere, that it was easier to keep things calm. He looked down at his hands. But I realized now that my silence wasn't peacekeeping, it was neglect. I didn't say anything, I just listened because for once he wasn't hiding behind excuses. He continued, you were always the strong one, Lucas, the dependable one, the one who never caused problems. I let that fool me into thinking you didn't need me. His voice broke slightly at the end. But you did, and I wasn't there. The words hit me harder than I expected, not because they magically fixed anything, but because they were something I had wanted to hear my entire life, an acknowledgement that I had been overlooked, dismissed, unseen. I can't change the past, he said quietly. But I want to make this right. Whatever happens with the case, I'll accept it. Your mother refuses to believe she did anything wrong. Emma is Emma, but I won't fight you. I won't protect what we did. He looked up at me, eyes filled with remorse. If you need me to testify, I will. That shocked me. My father, who had always bowed to my mother's decisions, who had always chosen harmony over justice, was willing to stand against her for the first time, not for Emma, for me. I asked him why now. He hesitated, then said something that caught me completely off guard. Because when I saw your face at that dinner, when your mother told you not to sit with us, I realized I didn't recognize the man you've become. You looked empty, like someone who had given up on ever being part of this family. He paused. And I couldn't stand the thought that we had done that to you. He exhaled heavily. I didn't come here to convince you to drop anything. I came here because I needed you to know that I see you, finally. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. I don't know if this helps, he said, but it's everything I could gather. Emails, statements, messages, documentation of when your mother started planning the transfer. I should have given you this sooner, I'm sorry. I took the envelope but didn't open it yet. He stood slowly as if unsure whether he should leave. Lucas, he said softly, I hope one day you can forgive me, not now, maybe not soon, but someday. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I didn't forgive him, not yet, but I felt something shift inside me, a small unraveling of resentment, a small crack in the wall I had built. When he left, the apartment felt strangely quiet. I sat on the sofa and opened the envelope. Inside were screenshots, forwarded emails, bank authorization logs, pieces of a puzzle I didn't know he had access to. He had given me evidence that would make the case undeniable, evidence that protected me, not them. It wasn't redemption, but it was effort, and effort mattered. Over the next week, the investigation concluded. The bank acknowledged the unauthorized transfer and confirmed my parents had violated financial regulations. Legally, I had every right to press charges. My lawyer asked me, "How far do you want this to go?" I sat with that question for a long time. I thought about my mother's coldness, Emma's entitlement, the years of being treated as less. I thought about my father's apology, his willingness to step forward, the envelope of evidence he gave me. I thought about the boy I used to be, the one who endured everything with quiet acceptance. And then I thought about the man I had become, the one who finally stood up. In the end, I chose not to destroy them. Not because they deserved mercy, but because I deserved peace. My lawyer filed for full reimbursement of my savings, plus damages. The bank handled the enforcement. My parents had no choice but to pay back every cent with penalties. It nearly drained them. My mother blamed me publicly. Emma refused to speak to me, but my father, he thanked me. He said, maybe now things can change. Maybe they could, maybe they wouldn't, but that wasn't my burden anymore. A few months later, I signed the lease on my new apartment, when I paid for myself with my own money, restored and protected. On the first night in my new home, I stood by the window and looked out at the quiet street, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom, peace. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the forgotten child or the family's afterthought. I felt like someone who reclaimed his own story, who refused to be sidelined, who learned that sometimes standing up quietly, firmly, and without apology is the biggest rebellion of all.